Ladies and gentlemen, welcome along to your weekly SETI seminar series. Today we're lucky enough to be joined by Daniel Rasky, who is the director of the NASA Ames Space Portal over at NASA Ames Research Center. He's going to talk to us about a topic that is extremely current. When I first emailed Dan to invite him to come to the series 4 months ago, I didn't realize that today would be such an auspicious day for this topic. But I'm sure there'll be a lot of interesting discussion about what's been flying around this morning with relation to human spaceflight. Dan did his graduate work at Montana State University, and undergraduate, sorry, and then did his PhD work at Santa Barbara, UC Santa Barbara, where he was working in theoretical physics. He moved to NASA in 1989 and has worked since then in the area of thermal protection systems. He invented the Pika protection system, which has recently been used on Stardust and is going to be used on MSL. And he's also been a member of many advisory boards, including the ESAS board. And he's going to talk today with us about the future of US human spaceflight. So if you'll join me in thanking Dan Rasky.
Okay. So yeah, it's I think a good opportunity here to kind of look at where are we in human spaceflight, where have we been, and where are we going. And that's kind of what I tried to do here from my experience at NASA starting back in 1989. My first actual exposure to a advanced space program was the National Aerospace Plane, which actually Mike Griffin had a key role at NASA Ames on, and found that to be quite a eye-opening experience, I'll say that. So, but let me move forward on this. It worked. Okay, so I asked myself, putting this together, so what's going on with U.S. human space access? I thought, okay, well, where have we been? And we're actually coming up on half a century since the first U.S. orbital manned flight, John Glenn in the Mercury program in 1962. And since that time, we spent about $200 billion developing and operating manned space systems, about $100 billion on Apollo, and about $100 billion combined on developing Shuttle and operating Shuttle. So where are we? Where do we find ourselves today? And well, the fact of the matter is we're still struggling as a country with how to provide human space access. And that's a pretty sobering, I think, situation. Right now, which one thing that really grates on me personally is that the only space access option for private, wealthy U.S. Citizens is buying rides from the Russians. And we're the capitalist country, and they're buying rides from the Russians. And if the shuttle is retired this year as planned, it looks like that'll be pushed out a year. But we're going to have to rely on the Russians for human access to space until we have a U.S. space system in place to take over. And right now, that looks like a 3-year minimum to get to where we have a U.S. space system in place to do this. And so I kind of asked myself, well, how can this be? It's with half a century and all this investment. You know, what has happened to lead us to this point? And I'm going to age myself here a little bit, but this is the space program I signed up for, okay? And I was actually an impressionable young high school student at the time when I saw this movie. And I mean, we honestly believed this is what was going to happen. Like, wow, this is just so cool. Well, unfortunately, we're almost a decade past 2001, and we obviously aren't too close to that. We do have a space station, okay, but it doesn't spin round and round, and we don't have a HAL computer. But got a few pieces. Okay, so why are we where we're at today? And I Looking back over it, I believe there have been multiple missteps and missed opportunities that have occurred since Apollo to the present time. So I wanted to kind of lay what I think some of those are. In the first, which again, back a young high school student, I remember this perplexed me at the time, even though I knew nothing about NASA. To obtain the political and financial backing for Shuttle, we scrapped Apollo. I remember thinking at the time, that doesn't seem to make sense. I mean, we have this incredibly capable rocket. Why are we throwing this away? We're developing something new, that's great, but wouldn't it make sense to hold on to that rocket until we have something in place that we have confident can fill the void? And the fact of the matter is we're still paying the price for this very unfortunate decision, and that's a fact. The Russians are still flying their Apollo-era rockets. That's why they have access to space and we don't. They don't throw anything away, okay? They have a system that works, they hold on to it. Well, we didn't, we threw ours away, and unfortunately we're paying the price.
Wait a second, Dan. I don't recall actually the Saturn system ever being proposed for anything but Apollo, as opposed to general heavy lift capability like Energia, some of those other. I mean, we had the Titan 3. I remember Titan 3 was a big deal. It's not man rated though.
No, but if we had not had to get the budgetary savings for Shuttle, Eugene, we could have kept some version of the Saturn V in place. In fact, we would have, okay, for infrequent space access. The fact of the matter is, going to Shuttle required us to abandon Apollo, and there's a lot of background on that from the Smithsonian that points to that.
No, I don't disagree with that.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons why we forced the Air Force to shut down the Titan line as well as
Right.
All their other boosters as well too. I mean, it's certainly a very complicated thing, and I think actually we were relying on the Shuttle more for having a larger military payload contribution, which the Air Force decided to do.
Yeah, well, let me get to that here. Okay, then to get buy-in from the DoD, okay, to have Shuttle, which we need to get the flight rates up high enough on Shuttle to get the costs down. There's an important economic imperative for low-cost access to space. The way you do it is with reusable vehicles, you fly often. And to get that fly often enough, we had to have the DoD on board. But that then led to some fatal compromises that were made on Shuttle. And in fact, the payload site is too large for that type of vehicle. Okay, you've been much better off to have a smaller vehicle closer to the personal launch system, which some of you may be familiar with, that Langley has put a lot of work into. But we ended up with a payload site that was too large for a shuttle-type vehicle. Pushed us then to a side mount design, which then to contain development costs and operational costs, we went to side mount. We had an integral crew compartment to reduce complexity and costs, which greatly limited crew aboard options. And these compromises actually are the root cause of the fatalities that we saw on both Columbia and Challenger, and actually a root cause of the Columbia accident, shedding from the rocket booster. So this was essentially what we bought going in, and we knew it. The engineers knew it, knew that there are these risks, but they were risks that were acceptable at the time. Then once we had Shuttle, everyone had to use Shuttle, including the Air Force, and they hated that. And that seriously impeded private investment in space. No one's going to compete with the government when it's flying the only transportation system to space. And there were fairly arduous requirements for using the space shuttle. That dampened non-government interest in using space. And then when Challenger, and we had all our eggs in the shuttle basket, and that basket got dropped, and we were in disarray for years on how do we handle things from a space access standpoint. Well then, we came upon that, well, we need to move beyond Shuttle, and this started in earnest in the late 1980s when the NASA program first came on. And we've made several goes at this, but unfortunately, I think you really look at technical overreaches. And NASA is a very good example. As I was mentioning, I came to NASA during the NASA era, and I still remember going to one of the first reviews and my jaw dropping because the state of the technologies versus where they needed to be to get to a workable system was immense. In fact, I remember having arguments with Mike Green because the adage at the time from the NASA program was, well, we have some technical, gaps. And I remember arguing, we don't have technical gaps, we have technical canyons. Okay, the difference between the state of the art and the whole range of technologies to where it needed to be to operate NASA were just immense. You needed, 5 miracles to make the vehicle work, and that was probably unlikely to happen. Well, we went from NASA then to the X vehicle era, the X-33, which we did a lot of work on, X-34, X-38, and then onto the Space Launch Initiative and Orbital Spaceplane. That was in the late 1990s, early 2000. And the fact of the matter is billions were spent on these programs, but no vehicle was produced. That's what happens when you too much of a technical overreach. You can't accomplish things technically. The budgets run out, and eventually the programs get canceled. Now, during this period in the 1990s, the DoD was successful with the Revolved Expendable Launch Vehicle program that produced very capable Delta IV and Atlas V, but they're designed to carry cargo, not people. They're the cargo carriers for the Air Force. Okay, so after a kind of a long dry spell, finally a win. And I think this was a really important occurrence. And I say this, by the way, as I'm no particular Bush fan, but on this he got it right, I think, on the vision for space exploration. And it was really prompted by the Shuttle Columbia accident, 2003. And there are actually a number of individuals who weighed in to this vision. I think Keith Cowing claims a fair amount of influence, Sean O'Keefe. There were a number of people out of OMB. But I think the key thing it did, we focused NASA on exploration beyond low Earth orbit. Up to that time, we'd really been stuck in low Earth orbit as far as our vision for humans. And this said, no, we need to go beyond low Earth orbit. And it also then provided an opportunity for NASA to finally start opening the door, in a real sense, for commercial alternatives for LEO access. And I think that had been long overdue. Well, then Mike Griffin entered the picture, and the Exploration Systems Architecture Study came into being. And Mike convened this study shortly after his confirmation, and he was brought in the spring of 2005. And this study went through the spring and summer of 2005. And it was chartered to lay out an implementation strategy for VSE. So Bush had laid, okay, here's the new objective beyond low Earth orbit. And Mike, I think very wisely, okay, well, let's put an implementation plan in place to say how we're going to do that. And I was a member of that team, along with a number of other individuals from across the agency. And the significant focus was on launch options for lunar access. That was the prime focus. How do we get lunar access? But that could also service the International Space Station. That's what we had intended to do. And what we did, the study settled on, many of you probably heard the Ares 1.5 launch option. And that's where you make use of shuttle developed components for a new Saturn V-like heavy rocket for cargo, dubbed Ares 5. So now you're starting seeing the correction to going back to more of a Saturn V type capability, correcting really for, I think, the misstep of Shuttle. And then also a smaller Ares 1 rocket for crew. And the idea of using shuttle components was to reduce cost and schedule, because you have, flight certified, human rated components. You try to look at it like a Rector set and reconfigure these components to provide this new system. The intent was to have an initial operating capability of the Ares 1 by 2011, so next year. And Mike was real adamant about that. There was really an important evaluation criteria is what can get us to a IOC of 2011. The IOC of Ares 5 was intended for 2018 so that you could have the first lunar launches by 2020. So that's what he hoped to be able to accomplish. And this is one of the summary charts out of the final report. And this is looking at essentially the crew launch options that were on the table. And you can see that a fair broad variety of, or fairly wide variety of vehicles was considered. They did look at a human-rated Atlas in Delta, called an Atlas Phase 2, which has a 5.4 meter core, and a real big Atlas, 8 meter core. And then here is the, what we call the Scotty stick at the time. It's a 4-segment reusable solid rocket booster with one shuttle main engine. Here's one with a 5-segment solid rocket motor and a 1J2S, and then a 5-segment reusable solid rocket booster with 4 LR85s. In the study, and this was in November 2005, this was picked as the best solution. They later went actually with this one. This is what Ares 1 is currently pursuing, this 5-segment. And shows the payloads that you have, both the 28.5 and 51.6. This is the space station orbit. The development costs, facility costs. And by the way, in these categories, these are all just ratioed to the picked or the most optimum category, because they didn't want to get into actual cost numbers in the summary chart. So this is 1, and so this is 18% higher, 3% higher, 73% higher, for example. Facilities cost, average cost per flight. Okay, and then here are a couple of key numbers. Loss of mission, and the one that Mike was really adamant on for this part of the vehicle, loss of crew, which again, this one, the 4-segment RSRB came in with the highest loss of crew, or the lowest loss crew numbers, excuse me. Now, this is the stack up, the package, different launch options for both the crew and cargo. And again, similarly, the payload capability, the lunar development costs, and other development costs and so on, down to loss of mission, loss of crew. And again, several things were looked at: an Atlas 8 meter core, Atlas 5.5, 5.4 meter core. This is kind of 2 big Ares 5s, one that launches cargo, one that launches crew, and so on. And then a 3-launch option where you have some shuttle side mounts. And again, this is the Ares 1.5 that was selected to go forward with out of ESAS. I guess one thing to note is that, again, the biggest discriminator here, I guess, is this loss of crew number, which is quite a bit higher. But the other costs are all, particularly if you compare this to this, the 5-segment, you can see that most of the costs here are similar, or even this one even ends up a little better than the 1.5. So it was really that safety number that they hung their hat on, so to speak, going with the 1.5. Yeah.
Has anybody done with the loss of crew on the
Yeah, it's
specifically not like by whatever formula they use there.
I mean, to validate those numbers?
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing that's not just. I'm guessing there's a mathematical underpinning to that.
There's some, okay. Let me get to that in a second, okay. There's some. That's a very good question. And again, here's kind of the lineup, okay. Where we started, the Saturn V, and okay, essentially 262,000 pounds to LEO, okay. Then Shuttle, okay, 55,000 pounds to LEO. Then the Ares 1 and the Ares 5. The Ares 5, 290,000 pounds to LEO. It's actually can loft more than the Saturn V. So you can see again this migration now back. The detour, we went from here, went to Shuttle, and now we're okay. Let's get back to more of an Apollo type of launch infrastructure. Okay, some observations, okay, from our ESAS study. Griffin considered Shuttle to be a mistake for NASA. He was pretty clear about that. He thought that was a bad detour. And it was important to get back to more of an Apollo type capability for NASA to really pursue serious human exploration. And he understood it was crucial to separate crew from cargo to get acceptable launch safety. That's the big difference, okay? If you can take crew and have them separate from cargo, you've got a lot more launch aboard options, or your loss of crew numbers go way down, okay? And he knew that, so he knew we had to separate the crew from cargo, go back to more of a capsule style. He was very concerned about the gap in U.S. human spaceflight capability. In fact, he was concerned if it's more than 5 years, we may never get back into the game. The U.S. might get out of the human spaceflight capability game entirely. That the U.S. public would have other priorities, Congress would have other priorities, and it would be over, game over. Buy the rides from the Russians, whoever else can come in the cheapest. He wanted a simple rocket design for crew that'd be much safer than Shuttle. And Shuttle runs about, I believe, about 1 in 75. It's about that number, okay, as far as loss of crew. Because loss of mission, loss of crew are one and the same thing, unfortunately, or almost for Shuttle. But he wanted something that was much safer than Shuttle and could be fielded quickly. Again, no later than 2011. He was real adamant on that. Work that he had done for the Planetary Society, I'll get to that in a second, prior to becoming NASA Administrator, really enamored him with the Ares 1 concept. That's where it really came from. I found this interesting. He was not overly concerned with the disconnect between the available budget and the required budget to pursue the Ares 1.5 option. In fact, that was one of the big discussion points on the team because we had some budget profiles that we're trying to fit to. And the only way we could fit to those profiles, we had to take the most optimistic technical scenario and the most optimistic budgetary scenario. And of course, as engineers, we know those two things never happen together, okay? And at one point, we kept hitting him on that. And so, well, if you're telling me I need more money, or we need more money, I guess I need to go get it. And we thought, well, he must have a money tree out in the backyard or something because, so okay, Mike. This is the Planetary Society study from July 2004. And you can see the lineup of this team: Bill Claybaugh, Owen Garrett, John Garvey, Mike Griffin, and so on. And one of the options that they identified in the study for the crew exploration vehicle was essentially the Ares 1. And that actually had come from Morton Thiokol, because Thiokol makes the solid rocket motors. And so that he had walked in the door with that concept for Ares 1, and he liked it. And so people stick with what they like. So, okay, some other observations. There was, looking back at ESAS, it's kind of interesting. I know all about the adage of the road to Abilene. But when you're in the car to Abilene, sometimes you wonder, how did we get, in this car going to Abilene? So you got to kind of track back and say, well, what led us into this? And the critical flaw, looking back from the ESAS, again, it was a relatively brief study, 90 days, but it failed to surface the very large uncertainties in all those numbers that you were just looking at, including the loss of crew. Very large uncertainties. In fact, in many cases, the uncertainties would dwarf the numbers. And so if you're using those numbers then as a discriminator, you're just fooling yourself, okay, because you don't know that they're substantial. And let's just look at some facts, okay. The intended IOC of 2011, remember this was important to Griffin. It was one of the most important evaluation criteria. We have to have IOC by 2011. Well, now, by NASA's own schedule, it's at least 2015. And Augustine said, no, 2017, 2018, okay. The initial budget estimate for Ares was $4.3 billion. It's now at least $13.5 billion through NASA's, these are NASA's numbers, through 2015. So those budgetary comparisons, probably throw those away. And this is one that actually I have the most trouble with. Those are really misleading loss of crew numbers of the Ares 1. One in, but I kind of laugh, one in 2021, not one in 2022 or one in 2020, one in 2021. And that's just nonsense. I mean, not only do you not have four significant figures, this may not even be the right order of magnitude, and here's why. Since ESAS, there's been some technical complications, which again, engineers know this, okay, as you dig into the details, what happens. There's been two significant increases in complexity to Ares 1 from where we were at ESAS. One is that they have to have a dampening system for the thrust oscillations. For a solid rocket motor, you don't have a smooth ride. You have a jerky ride. And it turns out it was going to be so jerky, it was going to turn the astronauts to jello. And so you have to add on then a damping system to try to dampen those oscillations. There's also a very complex staging maneuver with the Ares 1 because solid rocket motor you can't turn off. Okay, when it reaches main engine cutoff, the main engine cutoff takes a long time. And so to be able to stage, to be able to get the first stage off, the second stage away, for Ares 1, they have to do a very complex reverse firing of rockets and spin the first stage so it does not recontact the second stage. And those are all complex systems, lots of motors, lots of components that have to work just right. And then the last thing is actually the certainty of surviving a solid rocket motor explosion. And in case you don't know, here's what happens when you have a solid rocket motor explosion. This is a Titan IV. These are all solid rocket cores. When a solid rocket motor goes bad, it's a really bad day because it turns into a bomb and a fireworks show. And gee, what happened to the rocket? It's in there somewhere. And actually, post ESAS, the Air Force and Aerospace have come back and said, the ESAS assumed that with the capsule you could survive a solid rocket motor failure, and the Air Force and Aerospace say we don't think so. There's just too much going on for a capsule to survive, and that's one controversy going on between NASA and the Air Force on that item. Okay, so good news again. So even though I think the Ares architectures really didn't go as Mike really intended, okay, from a number of reasons, he did have, I think, a very important win. And he took the commercial space opportunity provided by VSE, which really had opened the door. Okay, NASA, your job is beyond LEO. You can look to other alternatives for LEO access. And he started, again, some other folks helped along, but he started the Commercial Orbital Transportation Services Program. Very important program. Provided $500 million to commercial space companies to develop cargo delivery to the ISS. And that's another SEB I was on, as it turns out, on the selection for COTS. Their initial awards were won by SpaceX and Rocket Plane Kistler. Rocket Plane Kistler couldn't make some of their metrics, and so they were later replaced by Orbital Sciences. This is really significant then. The COTS program was followed by the Commercial Resupply Services contract that went, actually, that SpaceX and Orbital both won to provide logistics support to the ISS. It has a contract value of $3.5 billion through 2016. And that's real money. So that provides a tremendous boost to both the companies and potential investors who might want to invest in these companies because they have a viable business case. And so both COTS and CRS contracts have been critical to the promotion and development of the emerging commercial space industry. Yes? No, that's Virgin Galactic. Here, let me, I'll get that in a second. That's scaled composites in Virgin Galactic. I'll get to that one second. So here, this is from the NASA Commercial Crew Cargo Project run out of JSC. And we actually had a very big role at the Space Portal, as it turns out, in laying the foundation for COTS. We had a number of national workshops, and it asked commercial space companies, what do you need to strengthen your business cases? Our colleagues at JSC listened to our suggestions and put in place, I think, a very good program to really promote commercial space development and critical services for NASA. And this is actually several years old, this slide, but it's very relevant today. The COTS paradigm is strategically important to the NASA vision, and it's more true today than it was a couple years ago when we put it in place. And again, that program is performing very, very well. Here's kind of a layout of a good swath of the emerging commercial space companies. Again, SpaceX founder is Elon Musk, Mr. PayPal, Mr. Tesla, and he's quite a busy man. Orbital Sciences, that was David Thompson, right? Thompson. That back in the 70s, right, Bruce? That he was one of the new space companies of the 70s that has survived. And now they have that contract. X-Corp, this is Jeff Greason, the CEO. He was actually on the Augustine committee. I actually had dinner with him last week. Real smart guy. This is the scale composites, and now with Virgin Galactic, won the Ansari X Prize, okay, for suborbital. And they're moving on to what's called, this is Spaceship One. They're moving now to build what Spaceship Two, an operational vehicle to sell suborbital rides. And they're coming along real well. Blue Origin, this is Jeff Bezos of Amazon fame. And we actually visited him last week, Blue Origin. And if you ever wanted to see a billionaire's clubhouse, go visit Blue Origin. He's got some toys in there you just wouldn't believe. And I guess that's, when you're a billionaire, you get to have quite a clubhouse, and he's got quite a clubhouse on top of it. And he's serious about doing rockets. Okay, he's also suborbital. Okay, then another opportunity. President Obama appointed the Augustine Committee to provide a review of the U.S. human spaceflight, and it was, I think, really needed. He did assemble a very impressive, informed, and capable national team, even though there are some people who don't like their results, but they were very qualified. And I have to say, I love the title of their final report, Seeking a Human Spaceflight Program Worthy of a Great Nation. They're trying to set the bar high, okay? And the first sentence in the report captured their essential finding. And the very first sentence, so you couldn't miss it. The U.S. human spaceflight program appears to be on an unsustainable trajectory. And that's, from everything I know, spot on. So let's take a look, again, one of their really important summary graphics and laying out the different options for pursuing a exploration program. Excuse me. They had a couple constrained options. These are constrained to the FY, I think 2010 budget and rollout. And then they had some less constrained where you look at adding some money. And then they had the program of record. That's the Ares 5 and Ares 1 here and here. And then they put their options in. And it's interesting looking at this. Right now what's getting the most attention, I have to say, is the FlexiPath options is a green column. And so let me concentrate on that for a second. Notice that the shuttle, they look at retiring it in 2011, since you fly out the current manifest. ISS life, okay, 2020, not 2016, which is what was being assumed under ESAS. Heavy lift, okay. There's no Ares 5, there's an Ares 5 light, and then there's a 75 metric ton EELV. This could be a Delta or an Atlas, plus refueling, or something called directly shuttle. This is a side mount, what we used to call Shuttle C, derived with refueling. But here's what is interesting, I think, as well. Commercial to LEO, it's all, crew to LEO, it's all commercial. And the Ares 1 is gone. Okay, so what were their critical findings, at least from where I sit? One was that the ISS needed to be extended from 2016 to at least 2020. And that's, I think any rational group of individuals would come to that conclusion. We spent 10 years building it until 2011, and you have 5 years of operational life. And it is $60 billion, okay, so we should get some value back to the taxpayers and so on. So that was like a no-brainer. I think this was actually quite important to pursue a FlexiPath and to various space locations and events returning humans to the moon. And we actually had one of the gentlemen from the Augustine Committee who came and briefed us, who said, here's what the real justification or the real thinking of that was. It allows you to defer costs required for human lunar access and habitat design and construction. Okay, so you can be pursuing exploration to low gravity well locations around the solar system until you have these other components in place and pursuing robotic exploration. And they hope to have some of the other habitat and other things in place potentially through international partnerships and commercial providers, so you get the cost down. Okay, so that's a big cost saver. It's another important one. A lower cost heavy lift launch vehicle should be pursued in place of the Ares, the ESAS Ares 5, such as the Ares 5 Lite. And it still provides a lot of launch capabilities, Ares 5 Lite. It's over 5 times the shuttle launch capability. That's a lot of payload, okay? 5 shuttle flights in one launch, but providing more commonality with the current shuttle systems. And by the way, this is really, for those of you who follow these things, this is really the Jupiter series. Ares 5 is really the Jupiter series from Direct. I mean, they renamed it to protect the guilty, but it's Jupiter, which, by the way, was designed by Marshall Space Flight Center engineers. Okay, they were, during the day they were doing their Ares 5 job, and during the night they're working on Jupiter. I mean, what does that tell you as far as where their hearts lie? Another important finding: LEO access for crews should be handed off to the commercial space companies, and it was time for that for a number of reasons, in my opinion. Again, this is a very important endorsement of the commercial space industry. And I should point out, this is both traditional and emerging. Okay, this is Lockheed, Boeing, and the emerging guys. Okay, this isn't just the emerging folks. In fact, that in the press, a lot of this has been, interpreted as saying, oh, that you're putting all your eggs into the emerging space basket. No, Boeing and Lockheed, they play here too. Okay, they've got very capable systems. And it avoids the difficulty and cost of trying to make the Ares 1 work. And again, from the get-go, there were a lot of real issues with Ares 1. Again, the engineers, you break away from Mike Griffin, well, what do you think Ares 1? They're all like, oh, it's, this has got all kinds of problems. But at that time, Mike was calling the shots. It was his baby, and no one wants to hear that their baby's ugly. So he didn't want to hear that his baby was ugly. Orbital refueling. Now, this is something, again, we should have been doing a long time ago. And it provides a tremendous number of advantages. And just, to relate it back to your own life, imagine you're doing a cross-country trip and you can't refuel. You got to take everything with you when you leave home, and you can't stop. Okay, you can't stop, and you can't buy fuel anyplace. Okay, imagine that compared to being able to stop at service stations along the way. Okay, I mean, this is again a no-brainer. If you can launch with just enough propellant to get to, a location where you can stop, check out the vehicle, refuel, maybe do some level of orbital assembly, and then move on. I mean, the option space just expands dramatically. And particularly with advances in information technology, telerobotics, telepresence, things that we're doing daily in Afghanistan and Iraq. We have pilots in Nevada flying planes over those countries through satellite links, right? They up to the satellite and back down. Well, what goes up to the satellite goes out to space. I mean, this is, again, I think just a no-brainer. And you look at the benefits from an economic standpoint, a payload standpoint, it just sells itself. And then this is, I think, another important one. And this is particularly relevant to Ames, by the way, in the former research centers or former NACA centers. The NASA should rediscover and expand its traditional role of technology development to support space exploration. And recall, NASA's precursor organization was NACA, National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics. And it was essential for the development of the aviation industry. It started in 1915 through 1958 when Eisenhower kind of grafted on NASA to it. But it had a long, stable, very critical role for the aviation industry. And we believe, and there's a number of people who are coming to this conclusion, the country needs a NACA-style organization for the 21st century now to support the fledgling commercial space industry. Very similar. Eugene. Variety of fuels, okay. Yeah, obviously LOX and hydrogen, but also probably some level RP. Could also be for ion propulsion, so xenon, argon, a range of fuels. In fact, that would be part of the study space. Eugene would be, okay, what fuels do you fly and how do you do them? And we actually have proposals, some I've seen from some of the traditional aerospace companies that look really attractive to do this really quick. They can put up stages and, okay, boom, have an operational fuel depot in a matter of a couple years. Okay, so Augustine Committee impacts. In my opinion, the review is desperately needed. It really was, because the trajectory was unsustainable given the technologies and the budgets. Things just weren't going to work, and it was going to eventually crater and create a huge problem. I think it provided important corrections on ESS findings. Again, Mike had a number of things right, Mike Griffin, just not everything right, okay? And so, so the Augustine Committee could come in and correct on where he was. And again, recommending LEO access be handled by commercial space in place of Ares 1 may be the most important, because Ares 1 was consuming lots of resources, and I'm afraid we weren't going to get much out of it. I think we were going to be going down another NASP or X-33 route. The day would come and they'd pull the plug, and billions of dollars in years just down a rat hole. So hopefully that'll be handled. This wrote this before I saw the NASA Watch today. It looks like the Obama administration is really taking these to heart, and I think we're going to have a chance hopefully to take a look at that. And it should become clear over the next couple of months, starting today, I guess on Monday. But yeah, it looks like there's some significant changes in the wind for us.
I guess I read.
Well, we're going to put it up. I think we have a chance. During the discussion. We'll let you read it. Okay, so here to end this off, another little, trivia for all you. Note the logos in the vehicles in the station in the movies. Okay, actually, it was Bruce Pittman who my colleague who pointed that out. They aren't NASA meatballs. Okay, they're company names: Pan Am, Howard Johnson, Hilton, Bell. So is this art imitating life? I guess we'll see. It is kind of interesting. They're all, yeah, all company names. It's one of our favorite movies over at the Space Portal. We have a big screen. When we're feeling down, we put on Space Odyssey. And with that, Adrian, if you want to put up the other thing, I'm happy to take some questions. Yes.
What are your thoughts on different comments about non-engineering issues like liability?
It's going to have to be worked. Okay. Again, we worked it with the aviation industry. Oh, I'm sorry. I was asked, what about handling liability, which is a big issue for space, and it's going to have to be worked. Like we did with the aviation, there are a number of different items as far as government indemnification and different insurance rates. It's being actively discussed. Yeah, but there's a lot of parallels to experimental aircraft. I mean, the FAA will have a big say as far as the insurance, and we're actually working closely with them. And I have to say, they have been working, I think, over the last few years very cooperatively with the emerging commercial space industry. What can we do to keep the public safe? And that's their first concern. If you're an informed participant and you get killed, well, you were informed. Okay, but what they don't want are non-participants, a rocket coming down on somebody's house or in some town. And so that's really where they're focused on. How do you operate? How do you get launch licenses? And those launch licenses then require the appropriate levels of insurance in case it is a bad day. But it's being worked in discussion with that industry. And so I don't know exactly what the outcome will be, but the right people are talking, Tom, to make it go. Yes?
You mentioned the coach system where you're actually funding people to do cargo launch.
Right.
The Augustine report actually envisions that NASA would build a cargo vehicle and go commercial for the humans, the crew.
Right.
Why?
Well,
cargo first, because they've got that now with the CRS contract. That's right now in place, and it's $3.5 billion over there.
No, I think it's talking about the Ares. Are you talking about the Ares 5 Lite?
I thought the chart with the Augustine that showed up Ares 1 as the 1.5.
Right.
As the cargo option.
Right.
Commercial for the crew option.
Right. Again, NASA's role is beyond LEO. Okay, so that heavy lift launch vehicle is for beyond LEO missions. So that's still seen as a NASA-led and directed activity. But then LEO access, which is where COTS is focused, is seen as a commercial activity. So that's where you buy. It's a make or buy type of decision. And so they did the split at LEO versus beyond LEO. And so the Ares 5 Lite is intended for beyond LEO. Does that answer your question? Okay. Adrian.
Dan, can you give us any insight into how SpaceX are going with the development? I mean, I know that they have very ambitious goals.
Really well. Actually, we were on a trip last week. One of the things I'm doing for NASA right now is leading what's called a commercial reusable launch vehicle technology roadmap. And so me and 19 of my best friends went and visited 7 emerging commercial space companies last week. SpaceX being one, Scale, Blue Origin, Maston, Xcore, Bonova, Andrews, and it's 7. Excuse me? And Firestar. I'm sorry, Firestar. And I have to say, it is just amazing seeing those companies. It really is. And I actually started my career with a small company, Aerotherm, which actually used to be about a block over that way, corporation. And things went bad in the 80s, and I came over to NASA. And it is just so exciting to see those guys work. It's like a beehive down at SpaceX. I mean, they're building hardware. There's rocket engines here. There's tanks there. There's capsules there. I mean, and the NASA folks we had with us, the ones that hadn't had a chance to see what these guys were doing, their jaws dropped. I mean, just, oh my goodness. And again, as commercial companies, if they're well funded, Elon's got pretty deep pockets, they can move. I mean, decisions are made, they move, they make mistakes, they learn from it, and he has such a potent team of engineers. Again, most of them from major aerospace companies. His best engineer, Tom Mueller, who developed the Merlin 1C engine. He's ex-TRW. In fact, he was on the executive track for TRW, and Elon lured him over. So you've got people who have had training at NASA and in large aerospace companies. Now that essentially they're turned loose, and boy, can they do some incredible work. So it's kind of like we're seeing the engine of the U.S. For software and electrical components. Well, turn that loose in the space arena and see what happens, and that's what we're seeing. And so it's not that these companies can do everything, so they can't, okay, and there's certain markets that are more ready for them to address than others, but where they have a market and where they have the technologies that they can assemble, they provide a really attractive option. And I think that's what we're going to find at NASA as we all kind of get into this brave new world. Mike?
Two questions, Dan. One with regard to this. The way I interpret this, and I'm not in the loop anymore, but the Augustine recommendations that you showed, all we're keeping is the rightmost column. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, say that again, Doc.
And the Augustine, you gave a table.
Right.
What the Augustine team recommended. And the Obama administration is only going to fund the rightmost column, the cots.
No, I don't think so. The way I read this, okay, you have to open these articles up. They're canceling Constellation, but they're still keeping in place a heavy lift launch vehicle, but it'll be a new program now. So that's, yeah, actually, let's turn to this for a second. This is a little bit, overstated. Of course, when you're trying to sell blogs and newspapers, you don't sell news, you sell, controversy. Okay, so you got to put something up that's controversial that brings people in. So this is overstated. It looks like what they're doing, it's like zeroing out Ares 1. That's no big surprise. And they're going to be revectoring from Ares 5 to heavy lift. And it looks like there's going to be what's being called the Son of ESAS, another study to look specifically at what is the heavy lift launch vehicle for NASA. And so that the Ares 1's out of the picture then, because you turn that over to commercial space. Essentially what Augustine recommended, it looks like is what they're doing. And then you have a new now study of what are you going to do on the heavy lift side. Because again, there's a number of options like you saw with the Augustine, including, do you weave in a fuel depot? And if you weave in a fuel depot, now what's heavy lift? 75 metric tons, 50 metric tons, 25 metric tons? Where do you divide the line at heavy lift if you have a fuel depot where you can magnify your transportation capabilities beyond LEO? So it looks like that's what's going to happen. Now, again, there are going to be some really unhappy people here because, you have to understand, these guys that work these programs, and I know Mike can attest to this, I mean, they pour their hearts and souls into these things. They're working day and night and weekends and, foregoing family and fun, and you wake up one day and the program's dead. That's a really, difficult experience. And that's what people have been through that, and I've been through that. It's heart-wrenching. Like, well, what happened? What have I been doing all these years? Wasting my time? With the stroke of the pen, it's dead. Okay. And that's why I think it's so important, I've always thought so at NASA, that you do a viable program, because you don't want to spend years, maybe even decades, working on something that ends up dead. You want to do something that actually yields some value. Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on believing that this change of course will continue on in 6 years from now?
The best indication I have right now is the longevity of the COTS program. And because that was put in place back in 2006, okay? And I can't tell you how many times I had people unsolicited come up to me and tell me COTS is going down. Really? Unsolicited. Whoa. And another fan. And it's still surviving. It looks like it actually has become kind of the fair-haired child, okay, in the agency, and the fact that it's been able to survive a change of administrations, change of NASA administrator, I think bodes well that element can finally take hold. And I honestly believe that, similar to what happened with the Human Genome Project, with some of you who are familiar with that, with Craig Venter and how he kind of set new goals that the government kept up with, I'm hoping that we'll see the commercial space industry back infect NASA. You take good engineers and you show them how fast these companies can move, they'll go back home and say, why can't we do this here? Okay, and it can. I mean, if you have to cut through some of the bureaucratic, drag, but I'm hoping that we can see some back infection on some of these things and move forward. I mean, time will tell, but I have to say, from being at NASA since '89, I'm the most encouraged that I've been seeing how strong this emerging commercial space industry is becoming, and I think it's going to be a real benefit to NASA.
Yeah, I guess if you can just comment about the other agencies that are immersed in this, and clearly the DoD helped SpaceX. That's how they got their launch. And
Yeah.
the FAA always had the authority to tell us not to launch the space shuttle.
Right.
So they're immersed in it. So I'm wondering if we're going to be more synergistic. It appears
We are actually,
nothing wanted to do nothing to do with the Department of Defense for
right,
some reason.
right.
And
Well, this roadmap that I'm leading, by the way, we have both Air Force, FAA, and now the NSSO just wanted to get on board.
That's why this came. The
Yeah.
DoD has the ranges. That's why they.
Yeah, exactly.
The
That,
FAA gives us the flight approval.
right.
So
They seem to be on board. Well, they seem to be on board with this kind of this brave new world. They're moving forward.
They are definitely.
Oh yeah. Well, they see, I think, a benefit to them. The DoD sees lower cost access for their missions, and that's what they're most interested in. The FAA knows that they're going to have to bite this off. For a number of years, they were kind of, I think, holding it at arm's length, and now they seem to be embracing it. Okay, you guys are going to have to provide regulation. There's still a big question as to who provides kind of the regulation beyond the atmosphere. Okay, because right now
We have
FAA,
the opportunity to say we do, but
well, the FAA right now says, you know, their jurisdiction ends at the end of the atmosphere, which, okay. And NASA really doesn't have this role of licensing, so there's actually right now a void in space when it comes to property rights, litigation. You have to start thinking of the different things that could happen in space when people really start operating, and right now there's really not a government entity to regulate that. Yeah.
One of the things that the Augustine Commission seemed to reiterate over and over again was this need for, I mean, they estimated something like $3 billion a year more every year. I was just curious, it's probably about 5 hours too early to ask this question, but if the president actually sticks to this idea of freezing discretionary funding, does that pretty much throw that out the window?
No, okay, here's what we're hearing. We're hearing that in what will be released on Monday, there's going to actually be a 200 to 300 million plus up for NASA, okay, which is largely going to go to commercial space, and that is expected to actually grow in the out years. Now, again, we'll see how, is this within the freeze, outside the freeze, but yeah, it's not going to be $3 billion. And by the way, that $3 billion was a ramp up. It wasn't immediate, it was a ramp up. But it looks like there could be some level of increased funding for NASA. But then, yeah, there's going to have to be more efficiencies found. How do you work, do more for less? And I honestly think by infusing some of the commercial space practices, true commercial space practices, back into NASA, we can do quite a bit more with our current budget. I mean, $19 billion is still a fair amount of money by most people's standards. So I think we can do more with less with that. Yes?
How did you showed this big list or, number of pictures of different possible launch vehicles.
Right, yeah.
None of them seem to be what was being floated 20 years ago as the Shuttle C or Shuttle Z. How did you end up with the solid rocket motor version of a launch vehicle? I mean, that was really the big deviation.
You mean the Ares 1?
Yeah, I mean, what
drove that? That was.
actually drove that decision to use an SRB, which seems to be.
You mean for the crew launch vehicle?
Right.
Jokingly, it was Mike Griffin and Doc Horowitz having a beer one night and drawing it on a napkin is kind of the joke. It's an interesting concept if you're trying to look at a simple, quick way to get crew to orbit. And solid rocket motors are simple, okay, and particularly with NASA, the launch reliability of the SRBs has been fairly high, except for Challenger, which caused a little bit of a problem. But so I guess it's something worth looking at. I guess from what I know, I'm not a solid rocket expert, but I know enough now talking from some of my colleagues that there's a lot of downsides to putting people on a solid rocket motor that wasn't appreciated during the ESAS study. At least wasn't appreciated by Mike. Okay, and one of the problems we had, Mike is a smart man, but everyone has their deficiencies. And when Mike was in the room, he was the smartest man there. So it was hard to tell him things that he didn't want to hear. And a number of the engineers did try to raise the fact, there's some real issues with using a solid rocket motor with a crew transportation system. In fact, I had one friend from Marshall was telling me, he said, the nail in the coffin of that design is that if it could be done, the Russians would have done it. Because the Russians have much less concern for human life, and they're much more cost conscious in a lot of ways. So if you could fly people on solid rocket motors, they would have done it, okay? And the fact that they aren't doing it means it can't be done, okay? And I thought, that's a pretty good, truth point.
So
And
one more, it's kind of of unrelated question. What is the time scale? You still have this big period of time now, if you kill Ares 1, where we have no access to space. What is the COTS time scale for actually...
Well, again, that's the 3-year minimum that I put up there. I think that's what can be accomplished by both the traditional and emerging space companies. It's about 18 months from the numbers that I've seen. If they are, 36 months, if they are funded adequately. That's about how fast we can move. And roll me back, okay, Gemini. How quickly did we do Gemini from authority to proceed to flight? And Bruce probably knows that. About 3 years, okay. So we have a proof test, because the same way we went from a military vehicle to manned flight on that vehicle in a very short time frame. So it looks we're about 3 years out, I would say, if significant funds are put there to make that happen. Okay, and again, you'll see then the aerospace companies, both traditional and emerging, go after it full bore. And I think similar to what we saw with Gemini, I think we'll have a solution. And
Just to partially answer Carol, I mean, I was part of the first couple of years of Constellation, and unbeknownst to us, in our trade, as it was called, there were 3 other trades. There were 4 paths, and what is Ares 1 was one of those other trades. The
Right.
trade I was on, we were looking at launching using Atlas 5s and Deltas, and we were completely incredulous. More incredulous than that even was that they were still expecting to use, to 2040, the same computers that are on Space Shuttle, the boards
No, I know.
and the like, because they're
No, I know.
man-rated.
No, I know.
Would not use anything from Intel, as an example. And this all seems completely incredulous to us.
yeah. Oh, this gentleman here.
Yeah, so what's your opinion of the ISS in all of this? Was it useful? Was it a distraction? Good use of money? Bad use of money?
That's a hard to say. I think in the long run, we can get some value out of it. Again, actually, the best comment I actually heard on the ISS was actually a former colleague, Gary Payton, who's now a pretty high position in the Pentagon. And he once told me, the ISS is the cathedral of the modern era. Okay? And a lot of parallels, okay? We put it in place for different reasons. It's taken generations to build. We'll never really get the value back out of it. But it shows what humans can do at this point in our evolution. I thought, wow. Gary was deeper than I thought. But I think there's aspects of, cathedral of the modern era, okay, I think is not too far off the mark.
I guess the idea of the controlled hypersonic reentry, and clearly we're the only ones that have it with the space shuttle.
No, the Russians did the Buran.
They only did it once, right?
Well, they learned faster.
They could redo it, but
Well, they flew it once and they realized, just go to our Soyuz and Proton. No, I'm serious. You can take a look at that whole history. No, they've also done the Bor 4. No, the Russians can do controlled, yes.
Well, they can do it. They do what they do, and we do what we do.
Right. They do it differently, but they can do it.
Capability, and certainly-
No, they're pretty capable. They really are.
Well, I'm
So
not saying that they're not, but there's 2 people that have it, right? Us and the Russians.
3,
Chinese,
Chinese, they bought it from the Russians.
the Japanese are coming up
Well,
fast.
that's the other one.
No, this is, I mean,
ESA has their access to the shuttle.
right.
Japanese has their access to.
Well, and ESA did a lot of work on Hermes. I mean, they didn't build it, but
So
they,
it's not like there's other people in the world that have access to space right
Yes.
now. So there's no doubt about this. They
Yes.
could easily put a man, they could put a manned capability on these things.
ESA's,
Who's going to ride it is a
right.
different story.
ESA's looking at having a manned capability for the ATV. Yes.
Well, I'm really naive when it comes to military stuff, and I probably want to keep it that way, but I always assumed that the visions for space exploration was at least partly motivated by competition with the Chinese, because the Chinese had announced they were going to the moon,
Probably in part. Yeah.
and military need essentially for the Ares 5 for heavy lift beyond LEO. So when I'm reading this up here, I got a question. Are the Chinese still going to the moon?
Yes.
Does that matter to our military? And does the
Not to our military, I don't think.
Well, I mean, in relation to being able to go beyond low Earth orbit for the military?
No, from what I know, no, the military is interested in LEO space. Okay, they don't have much interest beyond LEO.
So the ability to, for example, see the entire planet in one field of view is not of interest to the military?
Well, but they can do that. Okay. Maybe high Earth orbit, but they're interested in orbital inclinations. They aren't interested in operating on the moon. Okay.
So the Chinese going to the moon is not military competition?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't think it has any real military significance. Now, it did again back in the Apollo. You're talking about overflight. There was a whole range of international security issues that came into play with Sputnik and so on. I mean, that's kind of what prompted Apollo. But not lunar. It's too far away. It's too far away from planet Earth here.
It's kind of the same thing, right?
Hey, this gentleman here.
You know, when you said you've gone to these companies and looked at them and you're just blown away by what they're doing, what is it you're blown away by, and how is it different than what NASA is doing?
How fast they can move. Again, I've told folks, I actually worked at SpaceX for 2008 because they were using my heat shield. Elon made a good selection on his heat shield. And so I got to work with them for about a year. And the real innovation that these companies are making is their business model. And what's interesting, if you take a look at Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Jeff Greason, John Carmack runs Armadillo, their business basis and their business experience is from the software industry, not military and not traditional aerospace. So they came in with a completely different model on how you do developments. And so they actually use, as I actually explained to a colleague, and he said they're actually using the von Braun model. Build quick, break it, fix it, build quick again. So they've actually rediscovered the von Braun model, but via software development. Because what do you do with software? Anyone knows do software? You put something together that barely functions, and you get it out and you beta test it. Okay, and you find what works and what doesn't work, and you fix it. Now, what we've evolved to on our aerospace side, particularly when it comes to human transportation, is that you have to do what I call full matrix engineering. What that means is that any issue that anyone can think may be a concern has to be run to ground. Okay, and so you have to do everything. We say gold-plated. It's really not gold-plated. It's just that you have to run down every concern, and that's how the Boeings and the Lockheeds and so on have to operate. And so getting things done takes forever. Okay, now what Elon does, and similar to the software, once they're at like a 51% confidence, they move. Okay, 51%, and actually several of the people working at SpaceX who came from places like Boeing have told me there's really a culture shock coming to SpaceX. It takes like 6 months to adjust to how quickly they make decisions. And they have 51% confidence, they make a decision, they try it. If they're wrong, they'll back up and try it again. If they're right, they move on. And it takes a while to get used to that. In fact, I joke with some of my colleagues, when Elon decided to use Pika, we had to decide how we were going to get to Pika. And we're in a meeting with Elon and about 10 other engineers. And so they're giving their opinions on different processes or different routes to make this happen. So he looks at me and says, "Okay, Dan, what do you think we should do?" So I tell him. He goes, "Okay, so that's what we're going to do." And I remember leaving the meeting going, "Oh, by God, I hope I'm right." I think, okay, because that was it. That was it. It was, "What, Dan? What do you think?" "Well, I think this." "Okay, we're doing that." What? Holy, I mean, we aren't going to have 6 other meetings and have a committee and come back and and no, that was it right there. Boom. And so you have to get used to that. Wow, what you say matters. But they can move so fast and they can test things and they learn so much. And they, as Elon will tell you, they learn more from their failures than their successes. Because when you fail, you find out what you were wrong about. Okay. And that was the whole point, by the way, the Falcon 1. And again, it was brilliant. The Falcon 1 was the learner vehicle. He wanted to make all his mistakes on the Falcon 1 so that by the time he got to the Falcon 9, which is his workhorse, the one that he has to make money on, that the chances of that one going right were much, much better. And they've learned a tremendous amount from the failures they had on Falcon 1. So they're a potent team.
So just how capable is the Falcon 9 going to be? Because I noticed that Griffin really seems to be reacting to this in the lack of end-to-end capability. So he's worried that Ares 1 isn't going to carry up Orion, and you're not going to be able to land on the moon with one vehicle.
Falcon 9 can take the Falcon 9 to Leo now. The capsule can carry 7 people. So that's
carrying Orion, or is that?
No. Now the Falcon 9 Heavy could. It's actually kind of like the Atlas Heavy or the Delta IV Heavy. It's a 3-core, 3 first stages kind of grouped together. It could potentially carry Orion. Now again, one of the things that you look at for the heavy lift, okay, you could easily carry Orion. Okay, in fact, I joke that you could put a jacuzzi on Orion. It could carry it. The heavy lift could carry it. So as far as getting people, okay, transportation to Leo, yeah, the Falcon 9 can easily handle that. In fact, that was one of Elon's prime purposes of building SpaceX, was for human space access. In fact, the safety factors that they use on the Falcon 9, all their procedures are intended for a human-rated vehicle. They even have windows in Dragon in anticipation of flying people. And again, 7 passenger is what they can carry, which is nice because that means a full complement from station and you can come back.
So you could do a Falcon 9 launch with the people, they could rendezvous with.
You rendezvous, yeah. That's the way that this would have to work. You have to have a place to rendezvous, where you'd have like your heavy lift up there and have your your stages to go beyond LEO, refuel, transfer the crew in and go. That would be the model you'd have to follow.
Have they published any numbers on what they think their success chances are on the first Falcon 9?
No, Elon doesn't do that.
So it was 25% on Falcon 1. It seems like they're really counting on that.
I don't honestly don't think they've done a risk assessment. Of course, any rocketeer will tell you that probability risk assessment, those numbers that we're showing you, that they're close to meaningless, okay, and that you can't, don't really know your reliability until you've operated a system. In fact, that's one of the keys, by the way. To get to a reliable system, you have to operate it enough that you know what its soft points are and fix them. Anyhow, so no, I'm pretty sure Elon hasn't done a PRA on his Falcon 9.
Basically a demo flight and then a delivery flight, right? The first two?
The first one is a demo flight. This first one coming up that has a kind of a captive Dragon mock-up. They're actually using their structural verification capsule. The second flight, they plan a full mission cycle. They stay quite away from station, several kilometers, but they stay in orbit for a period of time, and then they intend to recover Dragon. And that's the first one I'm really interested in, because that's the first work out of the heat shield on the vehicle.
If that first flight were to fail, do you think that has a major impact on that? Or is it just
It will hurt, okay, but he's convinced he's going forward, okay, so they'll move forward. They aren't worried about failing, okay, they really aren't, okay. I mean, they prefer to succeed, but but it isn't like at NASA that failure is not an option, okay, because the impacts are so much lower. If you fail, well, they want another big chunk out of Elon's personal fortune. Okay, Elon, you pony up, and but yeah, it doesn't threaten the company. In fact, actually, he's now starting to get investors coming in unsolicited to buy parts of SpaceX. We know that for a fact. So that's helping him out. Okay, you get some fairly notable venture or venture capital guys knocking on his door. It's like, wow, okay. And also the things like the Abu Dhabi deal for Virgin Galactic, they came in with $380 million. I mean, people are starting to, money attracts money. Let's just say that. So, and everyone wants to be the first one to be second, isn't that?
I guess a comment on SpaceX. Certainly, we don't hear anything from the range about their concerns about safety.
No. Well, again,
we hear quite a bit about Ares 1.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the deal is.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, he's got standard liquid fuel. It's LOX RP. I mean, this is vanilla.
To throttle it, sort of.
Oh yeah, this is a vanilla launch. There's the technology that he's flying on Falcon 9. There's nothing mysterious there. Lithium aluminum tanks, friction stir welding. I mean, nothing. I mean, it's got a real nice engine. That Merlin 1C just kicks butt. I mean, it's just amazing. But again, that really came from the fast track engine that Marshall was developing. A lot of the technologies, he just made it work and made it go. Now, one thing he is doing, by the way, is some pretty advanced IT, okay, on his, because he's an IT guy, okay. In fact, their whole launch system, they run off of LabVIEW, which people couldn't believe you could do it. And Elon, watch me, boom, okay. Isn't that amazing? You launch a rocket off of LabVIEW, okay. Yes.
ISS is a fairly successful outcome from international collaboration. Are you aware of any group
ISS?
study?
ISS, yes.
Are you aware of any group study or commission that have been looking at having a heavy lift capability beyond low Earth orbit with international partners?
Both Obama and Bolden are pushing hard on international collaboration for beyond LEO, including lunar access. In fact, that's one of the reasons why they're kind of pulling back on some of those things. They're looking at pursuing, okay, what can we do, kind of similar to ISS. To say we want to do a lunar mission, okay, well, how do we play? Maybe the U.S. doesn't do the full end-to-end. Maybe we do a certain part, then we get, ESA or somebody else to do maybe the lunar access. That's one of the things I know that's being discussed, at least at high levels, looking at serious international collaboration for exploration missions beyond LEO.
Is it fair to say Apollo on steroids is erased?
Yeah, that was a really unfortunate comment by Mike.
I'm not sad about it, to be honest.
No, in fact, when Mike said it, I thought, oh, this is the end. Mike. Apollo on steroids. Sorry.
Well, I, for one, feel much better after reading the NASA website this morning. I was very upset, but I think you've restored my confidence, Dan, and I hope everyone will...
Hope it proves out,
join me
Adrian.
in thanking Dan for his talk.
Thank you.
I have a small memento of yours.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you
as
very
well.
much. Thank you, Adrian. Hope we didn't run too